Welcome to Snapshot Ketchikan. I'm your host, Abbie Stevenson. It's a cold and rainy day, which means it's a perfect day to go inside and check out the latest exhibit here at the Tongass Historical Museum. Now today is particularly exciting because there is a brand new exhibit in town, which doesn't happen every day, does it? So I'm here with McHale, Curator of Exhibits, to find out a little bit more about this new exciting exhibit. Hi Ryan.
Hey Abbie, how are you?
Good.
Welcome.
So tell me a little bit about what we are about to take a look at.
Yeah, so our exhibit is Sustaining Community, How We Gather and Why It Matters, and it is a culmination of 10 months of exhibit production.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is interviews, working with the community members, asking for photos and objects and videos, and then all of us as a staff coming together and working on text, photographing, like documenting, and then making sure that we can actually put this all up.
Now I am in complete awe of what you do because these aren't just dreamed up overnight, the exhibit topics, right?
Yeah.
These are thought of years in advance,
Yes.
and you have put in a ton of collaboration and work to get to this point that the community sees it, right?
Yeah, we actually have our exhibit schedules out about 5 years right now. Of sort of planned out ideas, and it really starts with us having a conversation with the community and seeing if it's receptive, right? If people are actually interested in seeing that story being told. And what we really do is with our core exhibit, Ketchikan is try and pull out stories within our featured exhibit that we can go a little bit deeper that we can't in the core exhibit.
Great. Well, let's take a look inside and hopefully you can give us a little tour of what we need to look at. Okay, so when people enter into the exhibit, it is suggested that they start here on their direct left.
Yes, and then move clockwise.
Okay,
yes.
Good to know.
It's always something that I try and design, but I realize that when people interact in this space, they do it on their own path. So you really can go any way in this exhibit. You'll still get the same meaning, same takeaway.
Yeah, it's a different journey from each side that you start
with. And you
with.
can sort of meander around. That's why I like the low table that you can see the whole exhibit.
Great, so what is this space dedicated towards?
So we are gathered on Tlingit Aani, the land of the Taant'a Kwáan Tlingit, and Ketchikan has been a gathering place since the salmon started swimming up the creek, and the Tlingit following the salmon would come every summer for a fish camp to harvest salmon. And from there, we gather at the water's edge, we gather to harvest, to sustain our connections to ancestors, to our culture, and then traditional foodways. And this whole exhibit this section is talking about how the land shapes our identity, from how we gather on the land and what we gather from the land and sea.
Okay, and so I see there are a few photos here, there are some quotes that stand out. What are some items that you can give us a little insight into?
Yeah, one piece that I really liked is the scrapbook from Jim and Mabel Becker. And they lived on a logging camp that was in remote bays from here to Wrangell. And there was times where they were a year without going to any town. And throughout that time, they were isolated, but they were never alone because they had mail boats, they had fishermen stopping by, and when they were close enough to Ketchikan, they would have their friends and family from Ketchikan visit. And Mabel logged every single person that came and visited. And took photographs of them arriving and marked in what they ate, what they brought, when they left. And it's really this cool picture to see how even though you are remote and isolated, like we are here in Ketchikan, you still have that sense of community. Right,
exactly. And I think I see a traditional halibut hook over there. Is that what I'm seeing?
It's really amazing technology too with the halibut hook because it is a knowledge that the halibut hook is made to make sure that you are not getting older egg-laying females or juveniles. So you're actually sustaining the population by not getting halibut that are too young and not getting halibut that are actually producing babies.
So the gathering itself of creating these hooks is not only sustaining humans, but it's sustaining the halibut as well.
Exactly, because if you really think about that, we are gathering from our land, but we have a responsibility to make sure that we're only taking what we need.
Yeah.
Just like the weaver, when they're harvesting cedar bark, they're not taking any more cedar bark than they need, and they never go back to the same tree.
And doing it respectfully.
Exactly.
Yes. And so this section, I believe you were saying, was more geared towards our identity.
Yeah, so this section is really about how our identity is shaped by the land and where we live on that land, whether we live out north or out south of town, whether we live on Pennock, or different aspects of our cultural heritage. And then different community clubs, like the Filipino Community Club, which was the first in Alaska. Ketchikan had the first one in 1930.
We have such a strong Filipino community.
Right? Yeah, really part of our cultural landscape. And similar, you have the Sons of Norway Hall, and there's an image of the future Sons of Norway Hall. It was an old cannery house being towed into Ketchikan. And we find creative ways to, I guess, repurpose buildings and things because we are remote, that it's just unique that this house got towed in from a cannery miles away from Ketchikan and then became a community hall.
So Ryan, tell me a little bit about this quilt that we're looking at here.
This quilt was made by the Ketchikan Coast Guard wives in the 60s, and they wanted to represent different aspects of Ketchikan. So you have the main school, Ketchikan Rainbird, the theater ballet, Creek Street, of course, all these different aspects of Ketchikan. And what I love about this is that everyone's part of our fabric of a community, and you might see this theme throughout as we use a lot of fabric and textiles, that we're all weaving this together, right?
That's beautiful. Yeah. And this beautiful Filipino skirt as well.
Yeah, that skirt is from the Cordillera region in the Philippines, and what we're trying to represent, whether it's the skirt or the Tlingit drum or the spruce root hat, is what do we wear when we are coming together, and how does that shape our identity?
Got it. And I think I recognize the Seasonals magazine over here, which a few KPUtv members were a part of.
Recognize a little bit of that. We have that in there too, because whether you're here for a week, a season, or your life, you are part of this community, right? And how the Seasonals, really a home away from home, you're trying to find your community. And that's showing them that, hey, you're part of this community. What are you doing? Share it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, the next step on our journey here, what is the evolution of the storyline here?
So now we're really moving into where we gather.
Okay.
And so this is different aspects like Green Bean Coffee or the New York Cafe, or where we traditionally gather in the winter, which is Ward Lake. Whether you're having a fire at the shelter or skating, these ice skates here were found in the Heckman House and date to the early 1900s.
Wow, they're fascinating.
Yeah, and they're actually beginner skates too, so someone was learning how to skate.
And look at this bathing suit.
It is iconic. I would love to wear this. So this bathing suit was most likely worn by a captain of a fishing boat, and then it's all wool and it's a full body piece. And this ties into gathering at buggies or Rotary Beach, swimming in the water. Ketchikan is a town of like opportunities, of seizing the day, and there's different aspects of that throughout this exhibit, that when it's nice out, you're sitting out in the sun, right? When it's storming, you are surfing at Buggies Beach, because that's the only time that you can catch a wave that is that large, right? Is whether it's rainy or sunny out, we take advantage of that.
Can you tell me a little bit about this painting here of June's Cafe?
Yeah, it's really a beautiful painting, and I love the shadows on it too. It adds a lot of dimension. We're highlighting June's Cafe as really being a gathering place in Ketchikan for so long, and it actually got featured on the Food Network for their chili. Yeah, so it's just this cool place that a lot of people, when they came in for the exhibit opening, were like, oh, I remember that place.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so I see there's this great photo of people gathering inside. Can you tell me a little bit about this, with the men and the women kind of like looking like they're getting some good gossip?
I know. So this was actually at the Stedman Hotel, and it's in their conservatory. And I was really excited about this photo because as I was doing research, I was finding out that Ketchikan actually had like a daily log of who was coming and going and what was happening in town in the newspaper. And it's just like how today we make Facebook posts or Instagram posts, we're constantly searching for connection.
Okay, so it's like pre-Ketchikan community cycle.
Exactly,
on Facebook.
right?
Okay,
I bet you just as much drama.
And I love to see Clara Diaz featured here.
Yeah, throughout this exhibit, we're trying to show people that sustaining a community takes individuals, right? And it's those individuals that are deciding that they want to perpetuate their Filipino culture, for example.
Sure.
And Clara is a major factor in that in our community because she used the Diaz Cafe when she was in charge of it to actually teach dancing lessons.
Wow.
Right? So she was saying that she actually bribed them with food after school to come learn. But then also then being able to do fundraisers for Holy Name Catholic Church or school, and then also for the Filipino Community Club.
Wonderful. So Ryan, I'm getting more of an artistic feel of the exhibit in this area. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, pulling from our environment, it really informs the way that we see and create our world. And that is especially true with sports. And with Ketchikan, there's little flat ground, especially early in the beginning.
Right.
And Ketchikan used the tide flats actually in front of Stedman Street. And what's super cool about that is we have a little index card from the scorebook, baseball scorebook from like 1914, that says that they were playing 16 innings. It was the longest game that they played, and that they were playing until water was up above their shoes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's cool. And then connecting that into today, you have eventually Walker Field is created. And then in the middle of a global pandemic and just struggling financially, Ketchikan decided as a community that we were going to vote yes on Prop 2.
I remember that.
And make that investment into our baseball field. So it's going from early in the beginnings on tide flats to hopefully getting some new and improved baseball fields.
And we definitely gather for basketball. I'm noticing a dedication
for sure.
for that.
Yes, and so there's some photos there of the first basketball game played at the new K-High Gym, basketball game over on Metlakatla, our close neighbor, and then different aspects there of sports and archery at the rec center that used to be downtown, and connecting that also into Ketchikan has a unique position when we play sports, that you need to fly somewhere else to play another school or fly someone here.
I have never heard of that in my entire life, but now that we are filming all of the, all of the sporting events, I'm noticing how much the kids travel, and I've never heard of that.
And the fundraising that this community does to get those kids to their games is something that's beyond the scope of our community. It's insane. It's like a huge GoFundMe. So while we were doing research, we actually found newspaper articles that were from Ketchikan in Seattle, and they were advertising to send up communities, and they would pay for their fare, and they would also pay them for the game.
That
so
sounds
that's
like a great deal.
how desperate we were for some competition.
Okay, so then it moves into music and art over here.
Yeah, and music really builds a sense of community.
It does.
And whether we're gathering at the monthly grind or the at McPherson's music store.
Wearable art.
Wearable
I see that
art,
in there.
right? And what this really is when the fall comes and we're transitioning into the winter season, is Ketchikan's events kick into high gear. And that, I believe, is really because winter is dark and cold, and we need something as an excuse to bring us together.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm seeing some signs, I'm seeing a quilt. Tell me about what we're looking at here, Ryan.
This part of the exhibit is all about how we as a community are responsible and accountable to one another. And whether it's the purchase of a raffle ticket or the donation at a fundraiser, Ketchikan comes together when people need help. And we have different aspects of that, whether that's the Empty Bowls fundraiser or Libby Oaksmith and the entire carnival that was set up to help raise funds.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, so our community really shows up when people need it.
I love this quote that says, "A place is only as good as the people you know in it. It's the people that make the place."
That was something that we heard time and time again asking people about Ketchikan, that it's the people in Ketchikan. Asking someone why they stay here, it's not because of the relentless rain, it's the people that they know, and that truly is what makes Ketchikan, Ketchikan.
And what are we looking on at this half of the exhibit?
So as we're talking about responsibility, a lot of that is responding to needs or honoring those that give or serve our country.
Okay.
And we have a baby box here that was designed by Ken Decker, and that was a project with the Peace Health Medical Center in 2017. And he actually created a form line design and then put these on cardboard boxes. And now this actually is all throughout the nation. And it was designed off of a similar program in Finland to help give new mothers the supplies that every child needs, and they all start off on the same foot.
That's wonderful. And so I see the Tatsuta shopping cart,
Yes.
I'm seeing some protest signs.
And this aspect of responsibility really gets into the point that we need to acknowledge our past and where we have failed to be responsible to one another or
Right.
accountable to one another. And by acknowledging our past, because it does affect our present, it helps us move forward together as a community, as a stronger community.
So that's why we're mentioning the word like evacuation camp.
Exactly,
and-
Japanese internment. An interesting story of that was Bill Tatsuta shared with us that while his family was in the internment camps, the Inman family actually came and took care of the building. And he was saying that a lot of Japanese Americans, when they returned back, they only had what they could fit in their suitcase when they left because their buildings weren't there anymore or their home wasn't theirs. And in Ketchikan, that did not happen.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'm so happy to see that there is a rainbow flag here on display. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we really want to make sure that everyone in our community can see themselves represented in our museums. And we realized in 2020 that there are sections of our community that are not represented within our collection. So we have been making an active effort to start reaching out to those members of the community and saying, what's important to you and how can we share that with the rest of our community? So the pride flag here is from Jessica Kwáan and the Kwáan family home, and it used to hang in her driveway. And it started when the Trump administration repealed an Obama-era rule that allowed children to go into the bathroom that was the gender that they were identifying as. And so what she did is she bought this flag, put it outside her home, and said that anyone is welcome if they need a safe place to go to the bathroom or change, that they could come to her home. And within days of her putting it up, it was torn down and cut up. And then immediately she bought two more and put a sign out that said, every time you take down a flag, I will buy another and donate to the local Pride Alliance. And so it really shows this aspect of our community of really lending that support and showing that people are welcomed here. Because Southeast Alaska is home to queer people, and it should be home and welcoming to queer people.
And I think you were mentioning before that this is the first time that the LGBTQIA+ community is represented in an exhibit.
Yeah, and that really is a reflection of our goals as an institution to really make sure that we, in our collection, are representing our full community.
And I'm happy to see the Loud and Queer zine on
Yes.
display, which I know you sometimes play a little part in.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then tell me about these signs, these protest
Yeah,
signs.
so the signs there are in Tlingit, which is the Tlingit language, and the first one is from the Black Lives Matter protest in 2020, and it translates to Black Life is Cherished. The second sign is also in Tlingit, and it was from the Pride protest in 2020, and it says love is love.
So I think you were saying before that this is significant because it shows that things that are happening in the lower 48 also happen in Alaska and impact us here,
Yes.
right?
Even though we're a remote and isolated community, these larger national and global movements still affect our community.
Got it.
And this is showing our response to that and what it really means to our community.
Great.
So Abbie, in this section, we're really focusing on how we're a resilient community. And what that really means is that there's always going to be obstacles to overcome, but resiliency is overcoming those together.
And that Ketchikan is good at.
Definitely.
Okay, so tell me about, first of all, I see this wonderful installation here with the helping hands. What is this?
Yes, so this was a piece from Community Connections, and it was right before their building opened in 2012, I believe. And every person that came to the event was able to get a tile and then color it. And what's really cool is you get all these different mosaics. It's all part of this idea that you are part of this larger story.
And all the hands come together to look like one hand.
Exactly.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful, it's bright. I was really excited about having this in the exhibit and pulling colors also throughout the exhibit that are in it.
Great.
Yeah.
And so what is this photo of the Ketchikan outcasts? Is that what that says?
Yeah, what we're trying to show here is resilient communities are ones where you can identify yourself,
okay.
right? That you can find a group and gather with them. And when you're going through tough times, that group can really help support you. So whether it's large or small, okay. It could be an outcast group where they're working on cars. It could be the garden club, yeah. Where you're making paper mache hats and having a shovel on your head. Or whether it's your cultural heritage. Yeah. Different ways that we come together to strengthen each other.
Mm-hmm. And so that leads you into this area. Is this about resiliency over here?
Yeah.
See, I'm kind of getting.
You are getting it.
Are the quotes kind of leading you
they
in a particular
direction?
Okay, I'm getting it.
In the center of this wall here, we have a newspaper article from Ralph Lewis, who was the manager of the pulp mill. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that this was at the closure of the Ketchikan pulp mill. And he's saying that whatever the future might hold, we will only be able to make it as a community if we come together.
Got it.
Right, and it's something that's still relevant today because whatever we're facing as a community, if we support one another, we can make it through it, whether it's the COVID-19 pandemic or changing our economy from the pulp mill into switching into tourism, right? It's just different ways that we're able to, I guess, switch or pivot. Mm-hmm. Then leading over into resiliency as well is cultural resiliency. So part of cultural resiliency is reviving traditions, and one aspect of that is the mother robe right here. And that was done in 1991 with over 81 artists from Ketchikan, Metlakatla, Prince of Wales, all of Southeast Alaska,
81
Canada.
Or 91?
81. It was
okay.
done in 1991, but it was 81 artists. Yeah. What's exciting about this robe too is that it not only is the first modern weaving of a raven's tail robe, but every artist that was involved in it is allowed to check the robe out and use it for cultural events. So earlier this fall, the robe was actually taken out for a wedding. It's really cool because we're not just a museum where we hold old artifacts, but we really are responsive to our community where this is an active and lived piece.
Wonderful. And so what are some of these photos here? I love this quote that says, "Resiliency is to heal from cultural trauma. That means getting to know who we are," by Janice Jackson.
Yeah, cultural resiliency is really that connection between family, lineage, the land, and our traditional foods. And when those get severed, then we lose part of our identity, or we have that opportunity to not have that connection anymore.
Yeah.
And so
sustainability is literally interrupted when you're
exactly.
removing how people gather.
Exactly.
And why.
So part of that is that responsibility as a community or as individuals to stand up and help perpetuate those traditions. And that is why we're highlighting people like Nathan Jackson or Dolores Churchill or Gloria and Holly Churchill for passing on these weaving traditions, or with Nathan passing on carving traditions to younger generations.
Got it. Okay, so the whole time that we've been filming this show, we have danced around this table. But you can't deny that there is a table in the middle of the room. What is going on?
Yeah, the idea of this table is that food builds community, right? So there's different aspects on this table that talk about either community cookbooks or a mug or an able skeever to make traditional Norwegian pancakes.
Able skeever, yeah.
Right?
Who knows?
So different aspects of how we come together around food and help build those relationships around the kitchen table.
And so what I really love about this exhibit is that people of our community can see themselves in the exhibit. Like this isn't just an exhibit about a community, it's about you.
Exactly.
It's about the people at home watching. This is you. You should be reflected in here.
Exactly.
And how does that relate to the names on the table? Tell me about this.
Yeah, so this tablecloth is from Gertrude Schrader, and she had a tradition that every guest that would come to her home, she would have them sign the tablecloth. So this is just a picture of it, but we actually have the original tablecloth on display in our core exhibit, Ketchikan Is. And this was one of the pieces that was center for developing this exhibit, because people could sign their names and then become part of the fabric of her community, right? And just like for the exhibit opening, and for every exhibit opening that we have going forward, we're gonna have a tablecloth out, and people will have the chance to sign on to our tablecloth and be part of our museum community.
And do you want people who come to visit this exhibit to sit at this table?
Yes, I do. I'm really hoping that when people come to this table that they can start a conversation, because ultimately we cannot represent our full community. This is really only a slice of our community that we're trying to do our best to represent. That hopefully it's really a starting point for a much larger conversation about what it takes to sustain a community and how we as individuals all have a role in sustaining our community.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I really appreciate you showing us around today.
Thanks for coming.
I have learned so much more insight about the exhibit and our community just from one visit. So I can't wait to take a closer look and see what we can discover about Ketchikan. And Ketchikan, come out, come and see this exhibit and see what you can discover about it, and see if you can see a little piece of yourself. I think there's a little piece of everyone here.